Hello, my name is Diana Sherban and you are listening to the Recolamp podcast. We meet here every week with people who inspired us with their life stories as well as with what they do on a daily basis. The really important things happen with sustained effort, and we like to believe that lifelong development is a lifestyle that we all should embrace. And how else if not by first letting ourselves inspired by the people around us.
My French name?
Yes.
Marc? Yes, it's written with a C.
Mm-hmm.
I guess like the saint from the Bible, the evangelist.
Were you born in Nantes?
Yes, in Nantes, it's a big city in the northwest of France, 70 kilometers from the Atlantic Ocean. So it gets the rain and the mild fresh air from the sea. And it's also on a big river, the biggest river in France called La Loire. So it's at an estuary. It's a port, it's a harbor as well.
Marc Guiraud has 25 years experience in the field of European policies and regulatory affairs. He worked for industry trade associations in Brussels with a strong focus on European policies relating to industry and sustainability. Marc is the first Secretary General of EucoLight, the European Association of Lighting Waste, Electric and Electronic Compliance Schemes. He is responsible for the implementation of the strategy of the association, the coordination of its working groups projects, and in his advocacy role, he represents the interest of EucoLight externally. Marc has authored, co-authored, and presented articles on sustainability, international trade, and the approximation of European legislation. As part of his work with EucoLight, he has organized and spoken at several events on sustainable waste, electric and electronic waste collection, and other aspects of circularity in his industry.
How do you remember your hometown as a child? Some specific places, some smells, tastes, people.
Yes, I remember the smells, since you mentioned it, because it's a harbor. It has a big industry based on sugar and cookies. So it's famous for biscuits. So I remember the smells of biscuits in the town. The city has been quite bombarded and destroyed, the city center in the Second World War. But there are still a lot of elegant buildings from the 18th century. And it's a pleasure to walk in the city center.
How often do you visit your hometown now?
Not often. First of all, my parents, they live now on the coast, on the Atlantic. And you can say that last year I did not go to my hometown. Nevertheless, I go back to my region and therefore Nantes region, let's say 3 times per year.
Okay, that's nice. And how do you used to spend a day as a child, let's say, just before school starts, because now is exactly that time of the year?
Oh, I have very personal memories of that. Let's say we were spending as children a long time on the beach and the seacoast, basically from June to September. In France, the holidays were quite long, basically all July, all August till mid-September. And because you go on the beach and you see the sea, you see wide space. And when you come back home, even in my room, my bedroom, I found that the space was tiny. And the second thing that I remember is that you try new clothes for the winter. And then suddenly you put these scratchy pants instead of the Bermudas and the shorts that you get all the summer.
Okay. Did you like school? Which was your favorite class?
Oh, yes, I liked school. Yes. Oh, I had many features there that I liked. Let's say history, geography, and languages, and also philosophy. Anything that was turning around history and, let's say, the society at large. I like that.
Now, do you feel that your knowledge in history helped you along your career, let's say?
Yes, well, at least to understand the world of today, yes, certainly it gave the basis. Yes, I think so.
When did you make the decision that you want to follow the law school, and what determined you to make this decision, and how did you imagine your career would go?
Oh, that's a tough one. First of all, when you finish secondary school, you need to decide for something. And I decided for law. First of all, because I was not a scientist. You got from my studies, I got, let's say, history, things linked to, let's say, philosophy, languages. So I was not bound to be a scientist. So law appeared to be something that gave an array of possibilities, and you can then later choose for a specialty. So yeah, it was the multiple possibilities that were embedded in law, and I knew already that law school was not only things like contracts and judiciary, but there are many more features like political science, history of institutions, also, let's say, international law. So those sort of things, I knew they were part of the package of courses that you got, and these ones I liked.
Have you ever seen yourself as a lawyer?
No, actually not. That's a good question as well. Maybe I was seeing myself as a teacher, a professor. I was seeing myself working in some international organizations, never in courts and lawyer. No. Law education as a basis for something else, for sure.
Speaking about teaching, you have been an assistant lecturer for 5 years. Why did you quit, or what happened?
Oh, yes. I had my master's degree. And after this master's degree in European law, by the way, I went back to the uni, and then I was in charge of a mission, a research project subsidized by the French government. So this mission was finished after 5 years. And indeed, to have a living, in addition to doing the research, you need to have some money, let's say. And therefore, lecturing was part of what you have to do to get to earn your life. I quit because the mission was finished, and I did not figure myself totally embedded in the academic career. So I wanted to do something else and to use the possibility to use European law to find a job in using that competency.
And after that, you jumped directly into the public affairs. Which was your trigger? Why did you choose to do this? And I'm curious that if you felt that you could do more for society, for example.
Before saying public affairs, I think it's the way we call it from the Brussels arena, the international affairs and the public affairs. But first of all, I had let's say the baggage of European law. So it was more the question of what to do with that. So you had various options. One could be, for example, to work for a region, a local authority in France, where I could use the European law for European regional policy, for example. And it came immediately clear that as private employee is the possibility to work for unions, business associations. And that is quite logical, let's say, source of employment in the field of using the European law, you see? So first of all, that was to work in organizations that could use European law before public affairs. And then for me, public affairs, this is one aspect of the job, which has to do the advocacy and to talk to public authorities. So yeah, that's more the way I would answer to your question. I chose that because it was a normal, let's say, and logic possibility for employment. Yeah.
Now there are more than 10 years since you work in the lighting industry, and I'd like to make a short overview of the industry first, and which are, in your opinion, the major challenges the lighting industry is facing at this right moment, and which are the solutions also, in your opinion?
That's a complex question. Well, first of all, it is very clear that even since the 10 years I have been in this industry, I have seen myself changes. The first big change was the phasing out of incandescent lamps at the end of the year 2000, 2009 around, yeah? And then energy saving light bulbs, they were rising up, but it was like an intermediate technology. Then you had LEDs, LEDification. You see, so in the span of 10 years, I saw 3 types of dominant lighting technology for light bulbs. So LEDification is one. The second one is the considerable development of connection and the tremendous progress in electronics. Now we're talking about a connected industry. So there has been a lot of progresses in sensors, in intelligent lighting. Yeah, so that's from the industry evolution, if you want. So the major challenges for the industry, one is to sell solutions to the society, solutions that are understood and that have a certain duration in time. So with a new technology, with LEDs, with intelligent lighting, it needs to find its market. I think that's one of the challenges. More sophisticated solutions are there, but then the industry needs to explain that well to the market, and also to put forward solutions that are well connected, have a good duration, and but that is relatively easy. The last one I'm going to mention, proving its energy efficiency. But that is clear because the products of today are much more energy efficient than before.
Can we state that all depends on regulations?
No, not everything. No, not everything. I think it's also a matter of technology, of product development.
Now, I am thinking that we see that around Europe there is a great perseverance concerning communication about recycling and energy and sustainability. And people don't do many things until we speak about regulation. So they don't recycle in a voluntary way usually. So I think we need something that pushes us from the back to do the things right.
Let me contradict you, please. I think not only regulations. Maybe the regulation gives the frame, but actually there is a lot that can be done because it's also the industry, the private sector, who comes up with solutions. Yeah. And there are systems to be put in place. Yes, we need the help of the public authorities, but we need the mechanism that we need to develop, think out, so that things become practical and feasible. Yeah, so it's not only a matter of law sanctions; it's also a matter of instruments, I think. And then I'm not pessimistic concerning the waste management and the separate collected fractions, because I think here there is a huge possibility for education, for educating the citizen, for educating the market and raising awareness. So it may depend on local situations. It can be cultural. It can be some form of incentivization through money, or yes, maybe through sanctions. But here, for European citizens, there is the possibility to do better. And we did at EucoLight some studies, and we know that European citizens do know what they need to do to discard their used lamps, for example. It can be improved, but there is already, thanks to the media, thanks to the efforts of EucoLight members, a certain level of understanding. So then we need to refine the knowledge of the citizen, but it's already quite high. No, what is important is the infrastructure, the logistic, that the containers are there, accessible. That is a lot of investment and a lot of effort in communication.
Yeah, I have been reading myself the study you have mentioned, and I have seen that they are aware of the need to recycle lighting, let's say, but they don't know where to recycle. And what solutions do you see? So, do we need to communicate more than we do at this moment?
I think it largely depends on the local context for that. Obviously, if a lesson is that citizens would like to know more where they can discard their products so that they are going to get recycled, then there is a big education to do. Maybe there is a lot of efforts to be done from our members to deal with the retail sector for collection at the retail. Maybe more partnering with municipalities to make clear that a light bulb can be collected at municipal sites. Maybe at other places, for example, in this building where I work, where the EucoLight has its office, this morning I brought a lamp because there are containers from Recolamp, the Belgian scheme for the collection of electronics and lamps. And yes, I put a used lamp in the box at the ground floor of the building this morning. So yes, it's just in front of me. So you see, it has also to do with the presence on the ground, with the logistics, and of course, more information. We know the power of the advertisement. We know the power of TV spots and the like.
Tell us more about EucoLight. Which is your mission, and who are your members? Anyone can become an EucoLight member.
Our slogan is to be the voice of lighting compliance schemes. That is, those organizations that are specialized in the collection and recycling of lighting. There are criteria to be a member of EucoLight. One of them is to be a significant player in lighting collection, because there are many organizations which are collecting waste, yes, but to be member of EucoLight, you need to have a certain market share, a certain legitimacy in lighting to be member. And also, there is a series of criteria. I don't know if you want me to enter into that, but one is to be non-for-profit and be financed by producers.
And for this year, which are your objectives? I think the pandemic situation changed a little bit your strategy, and I'm curious, how did the strategy change? And also, what do you want to do until the end of this year?
We have quite a work program, to be honest with you. And so I will mention a few directions on files which we are working. Maybe one step back. You have asked me about EucoLight, but I did not tell you so much about the mission of EucoLight. What we are doing is to try to shape the policy framework at EU level, so that our members have a fair level playing field to operate for the best collection, to help them to meet their objectives in the countries, and to develop standards and technical regulations for the sake of a sound environmental collection and recycling of lighting. So there is the regulatory aspect, and also an aspect which helps for the protection of the environment. That is very clear. Now, on what we are working currently, there are many initiatives of the EU, notably, but I will just mention a few so that you know what we are busy with. First of all, the requirement for what we call extended producer responsibility. That is a very great concept developed in the EU, which is basically an improvement of the principle the polluter pays. So the producers are in charge of course, putting product on the market, but also, according to law, need to take care of their impact on the environment financially. Yeah. So there are legislation on those criteria, and we are commenting and giving our advice to the European Commission on how we should proceed further. And also, just yesterday, we issued a position paper for recommendations to the member states for the core messages on how to transpose those new criteria from 2018. And that's one field. Now, there is also another field which is quite complex, which is we need reliable data. Everybody needs reliable data. Statistics, but also the EU has developed, I would say, almost a calculation tool to determine the targets that the member states have to fulfill for collection of electronic waste. And these here, what EucoLight has always said, that this tool can be good as long as the data are correct in the tool. And just right now, this tool is there for revision, and we try to bring correct data to the tool. There is also another quite big field of intervention, which is the fact that the law sets that 80% of lamps must be recycled of the content. But it's true that this also depends on the product composition. So we make investigations through our members to see here whether there are some challenges associated to that. One other aspect, and it's a big file, and I don't know how far this is, let's say, the case in Romania, but in many member states we have observed it, is the fact that some products that are available online that you can buy on some electronic marketplaces are simply not compliant. Not compliant because they present a safety issue, non-compliant because they are not subject to the VAT, the tax, and in our case, because the producer of the product, the producer, did not subscribe to an organization like the members of EucoLight, like Recolamp, for example, and therefore there is no financing of the impact and the collection and recycling of these products. And because the e-commerce is booming, you can see that there are a number of imports that are simply not submitted to extended producer responsibility. And that is a big problem.
Yeah, I know. I have been writing a text about this, I think 1 year ago. And I am asking you, isn't this a matter of regulations, for example?
You want my opinion?
Yes.
Yes, there I think so. You need to see that the world has changed. 15 years ago, those big platforms, electronic commerce, were not existing. And they have benefited, of course, for their business model of a tremendous boost. Good for them, but it should not be at the detriment of simply enforcement of the rules that we have. It cannot be at the detriment of, let's say, traditional trade. And it cannot be bringing an unfair competition because it puts compliant producers at an unfair situation. It's too easy.
But is there an European law that affects this field, or it isn't a law for e-commerce, let's say? Because I want just to figure out if there is a problem that we didn't adapt the European legislation to our national context, or it's just a matter at the entire European level.
The second one, I think. Initially, the EU authorities said, no, we have the tools in place, but that's the tools, the EU law needs to be sharpened. Clear responsibilities, clear obligations on platforms to check the compliance of their sellers must be sharpened. Visibly, the situation today is not perfect. So somewhere here, I think legislation is needed. Let's say improvement of the existing legislation. Yeah, for sure. It's not only, in this case, not so much a problem of how it is in the countries. Somewhere the impetus must come from the European level.
Okay, and let's say, which is the punishment for companies that don't respect this?
Well, then it brings back the countries, because who is checking? It's not the European Commission. It's not the European Commission is not a policeman. Is not an enforcement agency. You can imagine. So first of all, it depends the resources and the willingness of the national administration. That's clear. Then you said sanctions. Well, it depends a bit on the national context about the sanctions. It's not the EU who sets the sanctions.
I think we risk an infringement for this.
Exactly, infringement. And then we need to see exactly the punition. What is the risk? It's interesting because in some countries, it goes to the courts. For example, the law in Germany against unfair competition allows a competitor who has seen that there is a compliance breach with these extended producer responsibility rules, collection and recycling. They can go to court and get compensation. A possibility, if the authority, the national administration, has the willingness to do so, is simply to put some financial fines. It can maybe put financial fines on the platform, and in an extreme case, consider to operate possibility a closure of the website. You can see now. Of course, everything has to be proportionate, but you can see the direction it could go.
How much time do you think we Romania, have to avoid this or a kind of infringement situation regarding to the e-commerce with electric and electronic?
No, I don't know so much in terms of timings because it's not a problem of transposition of the rules in this case. It's more that there is a situation that needs to be addressed. Maybe Romania wants to sharpen its own law, and it has the possibility to do so with the transposition of the directive, so-called the Waste Framework Directive from 2018. Yes, and because now it's the time for transposition, so Romania can choose, and as it's right now that is to be done through an upgraded waste law of Romania, to find the adequate tools that the EU directive gives. Yes, for example, can be to make the platform responsible if the seller of the goods, they are not registered with Recolamp, for example. So yes, you could push your national administration to make the platform responsible, and it's just right now that the law needs to be developed and adopted.
Yeah, I hope that in few years we will have this available in Romania, because it's very uncertain situation for the moment. Which is the most important project that you have been working on by now, and which are your plans for the next year?
Since you look back visibly, one of the main project has been to have excellent minimal requirements for extended producer responsibility in the EU law. So we are quite happy about this development, really. We have been contributing to other more technical legislation with some success that allow reliability of data. So we are quite satisfied with this. And when we look for the future, so for the immediate future, what we need to do is to indeed make sure that the European law is improved with regards to e-commerce. We need to contribute to the best standardization so that it reflects the state of the art of the market. And there were some standards for WEEE treatment, for including lamps. And now there is the possibility to make the standards mandatory in the European law. And we have to be sure that the process is quite controlled and it does not go weird. So we have to control also the standardization, the transposition as a law of the standards that exist.
Yeah, and I think speaking about voluntarily acting in a sustainable way, I think we should communicate more about the fact that this isn't anymore a voluntary act.
Let's say the situation today, as the moment we speak, the WEEE treatment standards are voluntary because they are private standards now. We understand that there is a movement to have what the European Commission calls minimum quality standards. Okay, so we have to see and to fight so that the standards that have been developed by experts, really, who know the topic, who have developed the best of the art, that these standards, they become the law. So it will have a uniform aspect, and it will be, let's say, very good to industry. At least we will know the rules, that's which is important.
Thank you, Marc, for your time today. It was very, very nice to hear you and to talk about sustainability.
Welcome, Diana. Thank you for having me today, and also for Recolamp and our Romanian colleagues with whom I am often in contact for also working on this project.
This was this week's Recolamp podcast. In the rest of the week, you can find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube Recolamp with fresh news about how we can protect the environment from home or office, about selective collection and recycling of light bulbs, as well as our ongoing campaigns, both for individuals and as well as for companies. If you are inspired by our stories, a subscribe on our YouTube channel would help us, and also a share, especially if you have friends who need this kind of inspiration.